I've got about 20 years of experience in various domains, mostly in the IT industry. I've been coaching since 2015 and 10 years in the leadership role. I've guided, coached, and mentored a lot of versatile teams and leaders across different domains. And currently a leadership guide with ALJ, which is the Agile Leadership Journey. Okay. So that's my introduction. So like I said, these are the things that I will be covering, which is organization culture, introduction to the CVF, and the connection between culture and Agile values. I'm planning to complete the first three in the first 45 minutes and leave 15 minutes for Q&A. But I would like to keep this conversation going. So even if we don't do Q&A at the end, we can continue to do that throughout the webinar and have that conversation going so that it's meaningful for you. Okay. All right. With that, let's get started. What could be some of the reasons why Agile transformations succeed or fail according to you? I'm not going to use the AHA slides because it's a small group, so we can just talk through. So what could be some of the reasons why organizations are failing for Agile transformations today?
They are not clear. There are not clarity why they are doing transformation. Like most of the time, it is like the IM level management will say that we need to go for Agile transformation. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the people who are working in the team do not know why it is required. What is the end goal of this transformation?
That is true. What other reasons can you think of? One is lack of clarity on why we are even, going with the transformation. Most often it's because the whole world is doing, and that's why we are also going to go ahead and try, right? So what other reasons can you think of?
Can I share?
Yeah, please.
Rashmi? Yeah. See, as per me, I am also currently involved in Agile transformations for last, let's say, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
If you take any individual in the entire Agile, to me, Agile digital business more or less similar for me. If you take any individual from top down or bottom up in the leadership, from the team to the portfolio teams.
Yeah.
I have never come across any individual who knows more than 15 to 20%. The entire, if you take the entire Agile transformation end to end.
Yeah.
So any individual you take, that individual knows around 15, maximum 20%.
Yeah, that's a great point. Lack of awareness, lack of knowledge. One of the things that, reasons if you see the agility report, this is the 15th state of agility report. And if you see, the first reason is inconsistent processes and practices across teams. Nobody really knows what exactly needs to be done and how to go about it. Right. And if you see, the second reason is organization culture is at odds with Agile values. Now, what does that mean is what we will capture today. But if you look at it, if you look at this circle here, this defines the three different reasons or three different barriers of why Agile transformations are failing today. And at the center of all of it is culture, right? Culture is at odds with values, Agile values. So basically what we're saying is the existing culture today is not aligned with the Agile values that Manifesto is suggesting. The second reason could be organizational resistance to change. People do not really want to come out of their comfort zone and try something new because whatever they've been doing is working great for them, right? And the third biggest reason is management's fear of losing control. And because of these reasons, the most Agile transformations are failing. And that culture is made of structures, policies, and metrics that we have in our organization. These are levers that are driving the culture into a positive way or a negative way, right? So we'll learn more about that, but you're right. So, the first reason is inconsistent processes and practices, and that is because of lack of knowledge, right? Now, if you also look further, based on this year's report, this was consistently there for the past few years. This year's report, is saying that earlier the number was 8 out of 10 people felt like culture is a big barrier, but now things are changing. The number has come down to 4 in 10. Only 4 out of 10 people believe that culture is a barrier, which means people are making amends. People are trying to change, their ways of working, and they're accepting Agile a lot more than they did a few years ago. Okay, but culture still remains on the second top position, and that's why we are talking about it today. Here is still more data to say, culture is the single issue at the heart of organization failure. There's a lot of organizations that are saying, in COVID times, they realized that it was so important to be focused on learning and purpose. Like one of you said, right, there's no clarity. Edwin, you spoke about clarity. If you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, if you don't know the purpose, you will, not be as focused and passionate about contributing to the overall goal. And some organization, some people have said that whatever culture we built in the past really mattered, and which is what helped us to manage the crisis of COVID. Another set of leaders who are Indian CEOs and similar have come up with some great numbers to say that, if you had the right culture, you can bring about change, you can manage any crisis, not just COVID-19. And here is what happened during that time. There was 26% more employee turnover. There was 65% greater share price increase. There was less absenteeism. There was great employee productivity, so on and so forth. Why? Because they focused on culture and they were able to do it. And if you hadn't, then you will see organizations failing, right? And Don Pontifact says, if culture comes first, performance will follow. So what is Agile doing? Agile is really focusing on building a culture for people. And sooner we get that understanding, the better for us, right? So let's talk more about this. When I say organization culture, what do you think it is? What is organization culture according to you? How is it formed? Who creates it?
The people of the organization.
Yes, the people of the organization create culture.
Also, the top management decides what kind of an culture do they want to carry on within the organization. So thus it trickles down to
Right. Right. See, you're right. When a new organization is formed, the founder defines the culture that the organization will hold. Right. Mostly it is the founder or a set of leadership in the founding group will, based on what they value, based on what they think is important, based on what they feel will drive success for the organization, they will define culture. But what is this culture?
If you look at Rashmi,
Mm-hmm.
you take Elon Musk and SpaceX.
Yeah.
Uh, Elon Musk says that every week we have to release 3 rockets to the space.
Correct.
And then their iteration duration has come down from 3 weeks to 4 hours now.
Yeah.
So it's based on the organization culture from the leaders, what they say.
Hmm?
The iteration duration has come down drastically to 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is the high performance work culture set by the leadership.
Correct. You're right. So what?
so the vision and the mission statement, I believe, also defines the culture of the organization. Whether what's it right?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look at all the gurus, who have worked a lot on the psychological side, the objective business side, system side of the culture, how they define culture is, this is Edgar Sheen. He is the author of the book Organization, Culture and Leadership. He says a pattern of shared assumption that a group learned as it solved its problems of external adaptation and internal integration that is well enough considered to be valid and therefore to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to those problems. What he really means, it sounds a little deep, so I'll just put it in simple words for you. What he really means is, whenever there was a challenge and an external force, an external trigger that happened, a group of people who were leaders or who could be employees in the organization, they came up with a shared pattern of assumptions, saying that this is what will solve the problem, and they tried and experimented with it, right? Internal, external, all of these inputs they took, and they came up with a valid way of solving that problem. Now, they used it so many times that they considered it is a good way to approach whenever change happened. And therefore, they realize because it is valid and it is proven, it needs to be taught to all the new people who are joining the organization as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel whenever similar problems come to us. Okay. So in even more simpler words, William Snyder and other organization psychology says it's how we do things around here to succeed. It's simple. right? And it's also, organization culture also calls out what is important for the organization, for the business, and what is not important. It could be for the business, it could be for its employees, it could be whatever, internally, externally. Culture helps members of a group create meaning from their experiences. So they have come to understand what is desired and acceptable. Without, there could be some situation in the office, or there could be some situation, that there is a particular approach to it. And based on that particular approach, based on how people will feel, based on what the impact will be, the organization and its leadership would have defined some kind of boundary, that this is appropriate to do and this is not appropriate to do. And based on that, people will be, behave in a certain way. That also can be considered as culture. So all in all, culture can be considered as the DNA of an organization, right? It's an invisible force that governs or shapes what happens in the workplace. Agree?
RNP here, can I add?
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's very interesting to think about this. Every organization has a fundamental need that we want to become big.
Yeah.
So what starts as what you described will slowly starts getting attenuated or gets modified, and it becomes what possibly I would call it as centricity.
Yeah.
Some organizations are R&D centric.
Correct.
Some organizations are process centric.
Correct.
Some organizations are finance centric. Some organization, ultimately, what we need is a human centric.
Yeah.
And that centricity becomes it's a center of gravity of the whole enterprise.
Yeah.
And as long as somebody is watching and able to really look at what is the right thing for them, and as long as it is principle centered centricity, then it's really a very different organization, and it will be very successful. I just thought. Thanks for the opportunity.
Very, very beautifully said, sir. So I'll just add to that, saying that, if we know, let's say we are a human-centric organization, but we want to be known as a creative organization, or we want to be known for the interesting and breakthrough products that we are building. And if that is the direction that we want to go, is the human centricity worth keeping? Or should we go ahead and evolve it to something else? Will be the question. Right? So understanding where we are today, what is our existing culture, and is it aligned with the direction that we are going to take or we are hoping to get? If that is aligned, then we are doing a good job in shaping culture as and when we go, and as and when new emerging trends are coming up, right? So that's a way to put the organization culture, in my opinion. Okay. Now, do you think there are different types of culture? RNP, mentioned a few, like human-centric culture. It could be finance culture and so on. Are there any other types of culture that you guys can think of? Okay, so we've established that there is different type of culture based on the answer that RNP sir gave. So how do you know what type of culture you're in? Of course, there are different types of cultures. So how do you know what type of a culture you're in? What gives it away?
Is it like the sustained habits of the way the leaders speak and leaders share in town halls and public forums, and the way they share the information in a very open format? Something like, if I again take Elon Musk example, he tells that I don't look at MBA or engineering certificate before I interview any candidate for any high performance job. Even if you don't, even if you're a school dropout, not gone for any formal education, I will select you. But your job is you have to send rackets to the space. If you have that capability, skill set, and then the competency in a high performance work culture, I will take you into my job. So that kind of behavioral traits of a leader shares publicly, openly in the forums. So that will set a kind of their own style of performance.
Yeah.
Work
Yeah.
there.
So you're right. What you're trying to say is, the way we behave, whether it's in a one-on-one conversation, whether it's in a group conversation, whether it's in a team conversation, the way leaders behave, whether they are transparent, not transparent, whether they are hiding information, concealing information, for whatever reasons that may be, if they are doing whatever they are doing, gives out a specific way the culture can shape out to be, right? And I want to introduce you to a competing values framework. It's a model or a framework that Robert Quinn and Kim Cameron introduced. And these were professors at the Michigan School of Business. Okay, when we built this, their whole idea was to visualize and understanding the underlying values driving the organization culture. So they said there are a few characteristics that each of these cultures will have, and they identified a set of values that they will focus on under each quadrant. Okay, and so hence they called it as a map, an organizing mechanism, a sense making device, a source of new ideas, and a theory of management and organization performance. Now, how does that look like? Here, this is how it looks like. Okay, so they believe there are 4 different types of culture: collaborate, create, control, and compete. Let's understand each one of them. Now, if you look at the create culture, this culture is a dynamic workplace. Like, Shri Ganesh, you spoke about Tesla, right? If you consider Tesla as an example, this can be a Tesla, because their leader is focused on, future. He's driven by the future. He's a visionary kind of leadership. And the organization is constantly on the move. They are consistently changing their ideas, thoughts, and they are driven by those ideas. And they believe really in transformational change. And most often these organizations are, very relaxed. They have an environment where people can think freely. They embrace risk and they empower autonomy. There's a lot of focus on people's autonomy. How can we free them so that they can think creatively and discover things? So there is a lot of free flowing environment here. And because of that, they also have very few policies, metrics, and, structure, because they want to create space for new possibilities. And most of these leaders are innovators, visionaries, entrepreneurs. And this space is defined, the success here is defined by unique and original products and services. And like one of us, spoke earlier, most often this space is called, is usually this kind of a culture is seen in startups, because they're at the beginning stage. They have a unique product or a service that they want to introduce to the market, and hence their focus is on being creative and being building something really interesting, right? Now, if you go to the next space, which is compete, these cultures are heavily result oriented cultures. They have this winner's attitude, and whatever they do, they never get satisfied. They want to do more. They want to compete for resources. They want to compete for, the space in the market. They want to be the best in the industry. There's a lot of pressure in these, kind of teams to move ahead. They focus on speed to market. There is automation going on because they want to, deliver faster. And here people consider talking is cheap. They only focus on getting things done. Whether you say it or not, just get it done. And you will see these kind of environments and cultures will have people doing stretch goals, staying overnight, overworking themselves, because there is a lot of competition within people, within the environment, within teams, and everybody wants to be the best. They want to be the first. They want to be pioneers. And it's a huge competitive environment. And they also, as an organization or a department, want to have a competitive advantage outside with the rest of the world. And they always believe that no matter what, customer is their king, right? And they focus on building that brand. And success here is defined by quick wins, by market shares, by how well can we penetrate into newer markets and build our space. And some examples for this kind of culture can be IKEA and Walmart. Now, if you move up, you will see collaborate. Now, collaborate spaces are those that are focused heavily on team culture, right? They consider their environment as a friendly, happy family workplace. The kind of leaders that we have there will be mostly like mentors, facilitators, team builders. They value people over process. They focus on having one voice. They behave like an extended family. They have, even when they're making decisions, it's shared decisions, and they're sharing their celebrations as well. There's huge collaboration here. Sometimes they even sacrifice for the other person's comfort or convenience. And there is a lot of openness, trust, and they focus on long-term changes. Their success is defined by the kind of internal climate they have. How are people feeling? What do they, what are they going through? How can they help them? How can we help them learn? And so on and so forth. And some examples of these kind of cultures are family-owned business. Wikipedia is an example. I would have said Twitter, but with Elon Musk taking over Twitter, I did not put that here. We don't know how that culture will change, right? And control is, considered as a structured workplace. So when you say structured, we'll see a lot of rules, process, efficiency, productivity, compliance driven. The information goes up, down, and then work goes up, which means everything is top down, and reporting happens down to up, right? There's a lot of focus on safety, reliability, stability. There is tight delegation. There's huge approval processes. They're very analytical, systematic. And most often these guys don't go for big bang changes. They will focus on incremental changes. They will focus on building repeatable processes. There is a lot of hierarchy, functional silos, but they also have a very tough mindset because they're very objective on the results. They're realistic, and hence they may not change their mind very easily, right? And some of the examples that you can think of is these government agencies. And if you also look at McDonald's restaurant as an example, you will see that fast food, they're able to deliver so fast because of the efficiency they have, or the productivity focus they have in their restaurants, right? And success is defined here by authority, control, accountability, and so on. Now, my question to you guys is, now that we have these four and we understand them a little bit, if you had to work in either of these departments, do you see any tension between each of these, either diagonally, horizontally? What kind of tensions or conflicts you may notice?
Could you once again rephrase the question? I think I missed Rashmi. Thanks so much.
Sure, Sonal. So what I meant was, let's say you're an organization, like let's say Tesla is here. It's totally focused on building, innovative products and amazing things. And the R&D team is doing all of that. And let's say they also have a legal team that is focusing on doing things right, that is focusing on making sure compliance is taken care of, making sure legal issues are not going to happen. So do you see a conflict when these two teams are working together? Is there any tension that you see?
Yeah, Rashmi, this does happen. In fact, it does happen with, the investment banking industry, wherein they want to innovate, but they also have to consider regulatory requirements and the regulatory regulations, which keep changing, and they have to give in. Many a times they're not able to. If they wish to innovate the product or focus on enhancing the systems, many a times they're not able to do it. Those particular projects go on hold, and they are not able to given the budget there, they have to give the priority to the regulatory projects.
Yeah, right. So, so these teams will get frustrated, right? While these teams are actually trying to do the right thing, which is right for the business. So are we saying this is bad and this is good? No. So each of them are doing their own things for their own specific reasons. So we are saying, though there is a tension, it's neither good or bad. All of these culture types are important based on the nature of the work that we do. But it's important to be aware what kind of tensions we have. Okay. Now, if you look at this, the tension is in two dimensions mostly. One is the speed of change. While the collaborate culture is focused on long-term changes, your compete culture is focused on fast changes, right? They want everything short-term because they want to be available to the market. They want to be best in the industry. They want to deliver a product really quickly, a working product really quickly, so that they can make the money, they can, get ROI, they can increase the profit, and so on and so forth. But here, because the collaborate culture is so focused on taking people along, making sure everybody is recognized, they're feeling good about it, there always is going to be a conflict. Now, if you look at these two dimensions, you will see while the control space is focusing on incremental change, they want to do whatever they do, but they are risk averse. So they'll do it slowly, bit by bit, by going incrementally, versus the creative space will want to do transformational change. Now, the size of change is intention, right? Because these guys focus is something different from these guys. But now, being aware of this will help us understand that, okay, this team is going to focus on large changes. So how can we, and if that is beneficial for the organization, if it is going to take our organization in the direction where we are going, then maybe we'll have to work on some policies, some approvals, and relax them so that this is made possible. So how can we work together and co-create a policy structure or a metrics that will help us achieve this as an organization will be the question, right? Similarly here. Now, it is not just this, right? If you actually look at the other quadrants, this was diagonal. If you look at the top two, horizontal, these two quadrants are focused on people. They are flexible. They want people to, they give the people flexibility to do them, be creative. There are less rules and so on. But here, the down control and compete is focused on really on the system. They want stable systems. They want highly productive systems, strong systems, robust, which means while these two departments are working with these two departments, there'll still be conflict. Organizations in these two cultures work with vendors, maybe with these two cultures, there'll still be conflict because the whole focus is different. But just being aware that your culture is different with the partner that you're working with will help us find a creative way to solve it. But if you're not even aware, then you may get frustrated and angry and say, I don't know why he's not listening, I don't know why they're not budging, and all of those issues will come up. Another way to look at it is the collaborate culture and control culture are internally focused, and they're focused on today, whatever is happening today. How can we help them how can we help people focus on the right things by bringing in efficiency, but allowing people to be themselves too. But here you're saying these two quadrants are focused externally. They are focused on customer. How can we ensure customers' need is taken care of? So that's why they are striving. So when these two departments are working with these two, there'll still be a conflict, right? So while these groups are focused on possibilities, these guys are focused on stability. So again, there is a tension. So what CVF does is it lays out these value systems in front of you, and it tells you identify which department, which organization is sitting wherever, today at this point. Identify the bias. Sri Ganesh, I'll come back to you. Identify the bias towards the particular quadrant so that you can evaluate what change is needed to go in the direction the organization wants to go. And again, we are not saying either of them are good or bad. We're just saying recognize the bias, question your intent. Is this where you want to be today as an organization? And based on the direction you want to go, what steps can you take? Okay, that's the question at hand. Yeah, Sri Ganesh.
Yes, Rashmi, that is thank you so much. That's a really great analogy. Can we see my question to you?
Yeah.
Like, can we relate this long-term fast change, transform change, and this kind of analogy to the BFS and fintechs?
Yeah.
So if you look at the fintechs, fintechs is a relatively recent phenomena.
Yeah.
When we compare to the banks are existing for last 50 to 100 years.
Correct.
But these fintechs, these guys came in very recently, and they're making tons of profits compared to the banks.
Yeah.
And all they are using metaverse, they are using cloud, AI, ML, highly technology oriented, innovation oriented organization fintechs are.
Right.
I think the BFSA, the traditional banks are unable to beat the speed of this fintech.
Absolutely. It's a brilliant example. And that's why we are saying they don't have to change themselves completely. And, if I ask you to go and change your behavior, will you change? You won't. That's how you've been. So you will want to keep your identity intact. But what could you do is you could shape some of the aspects that will help this space and adapt to this space. So what are those levers that can shape your organization? Is what kind of structure do we have today? Is it hierarchical? Then do we need a flat structure for this to be enabled? What kind of policies do we have? Are the policies blocking our growth? If they are, then can we relax those policies to something else? Even what kind of a metrics do we have today? Is the metrics focused on, how much work each team member is doing? Or is it focused on what is the value that they are creating with the kind of time that they're spending at work? So by changing these structures, policies and metrics, which are the levers for shaping organization culture, can we get ourselves, in a better position to adapt to the bigger changes that are happening in the market? Okay, that's what we are talking about. It is, the CVF really helps us identify the bias that we have. Where are we today as an organization? If you had to plot your organization based on whatever you're seeing, observing, the behavior of the leaders, the kind of culture you have, the kind of things that are very evident in the conversations that you have, in the way, information is shared, in whatever is happening. If you can put a, dot here saying that here is where we are, and here is where we want to go, then what can we do in each of these quadrants to get here? Maybe reduce a little bit of strict, strong policies, relax here a little bit, and increase the space for creativity. Maybe, those kind of things we can try. All right, now, these are some of the examples. If I say innovation is sitting here, can you think of examples for each of these other quadrants? What kind of organization or department sits here? Just a random guess. There's no right or wrong answer.
Well, the ones which collaborate, possibly, it depends what the organization is looking to achieve, but many times observation goes like the people within the organization would be happy if it's a collaborative environment.
Yeah, so if I think about collaborate culture that you're talking about, I think of HR, right? HR could be a space where they're trying too much focus on people, they're trying to build in policies, they're trying to get benefits, they're trying to focus on how we can improve performance, they have an L&D wing, so on and so forth. So if you look at control, finance, legal could be some examples. If you look at compete, they could be sales and marketing, because they are the ones who are going to bring the competition in the space, in the organization, right? So here are some quick examples. It may not be true for all organizations. Some organizations have evolved to bring a balance, but most often this could be true. Yeah? So now here are some other examples, for organizations that can fall under these categories. If you look at Apple, Google, Tesla, all of these are innovative, great product, organizations. Twitter, Walt Disney, Netflix, and so on and so forth. So Twitter is joining Tesla, so maybe it will come here, but we don't know, right? How Elon Musk is going to take a decision on that. But here is a general idea of where organizations can fall. Now, my question is any of these cultures, so if I say Apple is creative, is it going to stay creative all its life, all its, life of the organization? So is the culture static or dynamic? What do you guys think?
Dynamic.
Dynamic is what I feel, because like humans, organizations also evolve, and possibly, yeah, along with being creative, it would add on to other being collaborative also, and so on.
Right. Like humans have personalities, organization have personalities, and it keeps changing as new people keep joining and new environment keeps getting evolved. And because of the new people joining, new leaders being part of the leadership group, new policies will come, new structures will come, new metrics will get added. Some of them may get removed. So culture is never static. It keeps changing dynamically. And one of the great examples is of Apple. we just have 20 minutes. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to quickly rush. Steve Jobs was, a single entrepreneur. When he started this organization in 1976, he focused on creativity. So he hired people who were unconstrained. He hired people who were free-minded, creative, and high on productivity. And he gave them full autonomy to say, okay, go ahead and do whatever you do, right? But as and when they started building interesting products, he realized he needed that collaborative culture. He needed people to work together as team. So he moved slowly into this collaborative space, and they had a combination of these two, right? But as and when, and this is when Macintosh was built, as and when Macintosh started selling really well, there was enormous growth, and that scale led them to introduce some standards, procedures, compliance, and everything legally so that they could manage that scale, right? And during that time, because Steve Jobs was, valued creativity, and the organization expected him to be hierarchical, he could not manage the team in a hierarchical fashion, and he was fired, right? And John Scully joined the team as CEO, and John Scully really brought in a lot of stability to the organization. He made Macintosh, reach to every other country globally, and there was a huge volume of sales. And in the next few years, if you see, while Steve Jobs was not there, they sold volumes and volumes of different kind of computers, but not really, nothing new was built. So it ended up becoming a manufacturing company rather than a techno company that Steve Jobs had, envisioned, right? And they hired Steve Jobs back again, somewhere here in 1996. And you will see a series of new innovative products came in because he valued this piece. But by the time, this time around, he had learned that it's important to bring the balance. So he not only maintained the balance of all these aspects, but also made sure that he was competing enough by adopting the organization to all the emerging trends that were happening today, right? So because of which it became a very successful company, and he resigned for whatever health reasons in 2011, but Apple continues to be one of the powerful organizations we have today. Okay, this is just a quick example of how culture can dynamically move based on the needs of the emerging market. And as long as you're able to do that, you will stay in the market as a successful organization. If you're not able to do that, you will end up like Kodak, which actually succumbed to all the changes that happened and could not evolve itself digitally. Right? I'll just take maybe a couple of questions and then we'll move on to the next one. Any questions here? Okay, so I'll move ahead. Now let's connect these agile values with the competing values framework. What do you see? Where is the connection? Right now, if I bring this up here, and these are the values: individuals and interactions, working product, customer collaboration, responding to change, process and tools, comprehensive documentation, contract negotiation, and following a plan. Now, if I ask you to put these in each of these quadrants, where would you put individuals and interactions? Okay, sorry, it stopped sharing for some reason. Yeah, so where do you think this will fall? Where does individuals and interactions, where can I place it?
Collaborate.
Okay, great. Now, where can we place process and tools?
Collaborate.
Process and tools.
Control.
Control.
Yeah.
Tools would be control.
What about working products?
Create.
What about comprehensive documentation?
Control.
Documentation would be control.
What about contract negotiation?
Customer collaboration would be collaborate again.
Collaborate. What about contract negotiation?
Contract negotiation would be
Control.
compete.
Control.
Yeah. Responding to change?
Create.
Responding to change would be create.
And
following a plan would be control.
correct. Now, working products, here, if you identify the difference, create space, if there was an MVP, you could have put it here because you're trying to experiment and figure it out. But once it's all figured and then you want to go sell it and, make profit, it's actually working product. Right? So do you get that? Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what patterns are you noticing here? What do you see? Do you see anything interesting?
Control is more.
Okay. And if you see this is according to the manifesto, we are saying we will focus on individuals and interactions over process and tools, working products over comprehensive contract. So everything that's on the right is fallen here. So what does that mean?
That is predictive approach. Basically, control is a predictive approach, and agile values comes in the other quadrants, other three quadrants.
Yeah. So basically, the whole intent of the manifesto was created because the industry at that time was heavy on these. Right? We had great processes and tools. We had great comprehensive documentation. We focused on negotiation. We followed a plan and so on and so forth. And that really worked in the space where everything was predictable. Everything was being able to be planned. Everything was straightforward. But as we entered the VUCA world, where everything suddenly started changing and customer needs started changing, market started changing, the internet happened. So information was freely available on the internet to everybody. So no organization was unique because everything was available. Anybody could build anything. All the information was out there. So people started realizing the 17 people who built the manifesto realized if we continue to stay in the control space without focusing on all of these, our organizations will not be able to adapt the change. So they introduced these values and said, okay, now if you want to bring about a balance in your organization and be able to adapt to change, you need to focus on these values as well while you are doing this too. Because they're saying, it's not this or that. They're saying this over that, which means you do all of this, but focus on these more because this is the need of the hour. Yeah. So now,
I think from more from internal focus to external focus, right?
Right. That's true. That's one way to look at it. But you're taking it as a given that internally anyways you will continue to do what you are doing. So externally you are saying that we will do everything else too. Now I want to introduce a little more interesting thing here. Now Scrum, okay, or Kanban. What are these? These are frameworks, correct? Now, if I had to ask you to place these in any of these four quadrants, where would you place this?
Collaborate.
Okay. And why collaborate? Isn't Scrum very rigid when it says you have to have a stand-up, you have to have a review, you have to do sprint planning, you have to have retrospectives? What are these? These are processes or not?
Rashmi, as for the Scrum guide, nothing is said to be mandatory. What Scrum Guide suggests is whatever suits the process or the team should be adapted. They should be adapted. Yeah.
But any agile frameworks and practices will say that. But Scrum also says when you're adapting Scrum, you adapt it in its entirety. You can't say I will not do stand-up. You do the stand-up in the way that makes sense to you, but do the stand-up. You do sprint planning, you do reviews and retros, but you do it, right? That's what it says. So they are clearly laid out rules on how to conduct Scrum, how to have Scrum, or how to go about a Kanban. Otherwise, those frameworks are not called frameworks, right? But the key point is these frameworks, if they are considered only as practices. Like, if you just do stand up, if you just do the ceremonies and get attached to the practices that we're doing without embracing these values, in a stand up, are you focusing on responding to change based on the things that are happening? Are you focusing on customer collaboration, or is your stand up just an update meeting? Are you focusing on having effective individuals and focusing on individuals and having effective interactions, or are you just meeting together because you're supposed to meet? Now that's the question. If your culture today, even though you've adapted to Agile, is heavily focused on practices, and we don't emphasize on these cultures that we are trying to drive, it's just another control process. What is changing? Nothing. And most organizations fail because of that. Do you get the point?
But Rashmi?
Yes, yes, Rashmi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Rashmi, if you look at the Agile Manifesto, that came into existence around 20 years ago.
Correct.
But at the time, the digital transformation, metaverse, AML was not much at the time.
Yeah.
But these days and today, these days and times, it's more about that create, responding to the change and compete is of more relevance today.
Correct. Okay, in some of the domains, in some of the domains. So if you're building a robot, if you're using AIML, that is, wherever there is those kind of tools and techniques we're using, it is still relevant. And because we are going through a digital transformation, we see most of the domains doing it, right? But now, just because Agile Manifesto said this 20 years ago, my question is it still not relevant? Are we not supposed to be still focusing, in spite of the multiverse coming, in spite of all the changes that are happening? We still want to focus on collaboration. We still want to focus on individuals and interactions. And whatever change is happening, we want to respond to change and come up with working products that will solve the need of the customer, right?
Absolutely, but do you think if you look at the digital or death, if any customer, any business, if they don't get into digital transformation, their existence, the survival may be at stake.
Yes.
So is it not this is the right time to people to get into create and compete space rather than more into control and collaboration? Anyway, it is by default it should be there. But is it not this is the time to get into the create and compete space in these days and times?
Could be. It depends on where the organization wants to go. If the organization wants to be successful, and to your point, if create and compete is the norm of today, and if the organization recognizes that we all want to go to create and compete, so they should focus on introducing values that will help them respond to change and build working products. And that, not doing just that, but also ensure collaboration is happening in order to make that happen. And because most organizations are at scale, like, if you have a large organization, it won't survive without some control. You need to have some compliance, you need to have some legal aspects, you need to keep budget in place, all of those. So you will need control and collaborate also. But you may want to lean more towards create and compete, to your point. But the question is, how do we bring a balance? If you go towards one of these, like you say, you want to only be create and compete and focus externally, it may be too dangerous, because you are losing out on collaborate. Your people may get frustrated. They may get burnt out because your competition is very high and your culture is going to be competitive. People may not feel valued. They may quit. The great resignation happened because of that, right? Right? So you
Sure.
can't, you have to bring a balance. We are not saying, lean more towards any of the side. We are saying, how can we lean where we want to go, still holding the other aspects also as much as we need it. Do collaborate, do have control values, but lean more towards create and compete. It's okay. But don't forget collaborate and control. Otherwise, you will be in soup. Because organization won't survive without all of these aspects.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. And today it's all about the mindset, right? It's not either or. Let's either be create, compete, or collaborate and control, or just create or control. It's not or. Today's environment needs an and mindset where we have to do everything. But in what proportion is left to us, because we know where we want our organization to head to. So based on that, you figure out. And all of these agile practices, agile agility is just a means to get to the end. And what is the end? To achieve business outcomes. And if you don't make money, if you don't get the ROI, your organization is going to fall. What's the point of doing all of this if your organization is not going to make money and survive, right? So it's about the balance. Agile agility, whether you use agile ways of working or not, do whatever you need to do in order to keep your organization alive. And agile is just one way to do it. Yeah.
Sure, agreed.
Thank you. So I just have a couple slides. I'll just quickly cover that. These are all on the surface, right? Culture is visible on the surface through its standard policies, to the people, their behavior, in the way leadership, behave and act and take decisions, in the way organization looks, even in compensation and all of it, right? But that is just the top surface. Now, what really matters is what is deeply rooted inside. If the things that are visible on the top, is aligned with what is deeply embedded in people, what kind of beliefs do people have? What kind of perceptions do they hold? What kind of shared assumptions do you have as an organization? What are the norms? What are the unwritten rules that you're all following without having to say? You may be following a protocol or a norm. What kind of stories are you telling yourself, right? That is really what will drive the culture. So the way we really get things done is here. Our behavior is shaping through this. And the way we say things we are getting done is seen here. Your organization may have large posters about vision, mission, values, strategy, all of that on the walls. But are they just, artifacts that are visible on the external? Or are they deeply rooted is the question. If it is not deeply rooted, then it is just, facade. It's not really a culture that will bring about big change, right? So that is the question. And I believe that leadership and culture are two sides of the same coin. And I believe what Edgar Sheehan says. So organizations are influenced by culture. Culture is influenced by organization, right? Though we say initially the founder's values defines the organization culture, but as in more and more people get added to that culture, new policies get formed, new structures, new, ways of working gets evolved, and that becomes the culture. Now, if your leader is not a good fit, he may get fired like Steve Jobs. So leadership and culture are two sides of the same coin. They influence each other really strongly. And it's important for our leaders to align with the culture. And it's important for our culture to align to the new leadership, if there is any, based on the direction the organization is going. So these are some key takeaways. I am not going to read all of this because I think we established that. But one thing I want to reiterate is culture change is really hard. It's complex and time consuming. It needs commitment to shape the culture over time. But we can shape our culture by making tweaks to our structures, policies, and measure within our span of control. I'm saying this because I believe leadership is at all levels. We may not have the titles as directors, VP, and so on and so forth. But even if, as in whichever role we are, whether we are Scrum Masters, coaches, product owners, whatever, we can show leadership in our own space and try to see how we can shape our culture, right? And as long as we are able to build that alignment of our culture with agile values, we will be able to see transformation success. Otherwise, we will see only limited agility because it's not going to sustain. These are some references for further reading. If anybody wants to dig deeper, here are 2 books that you can take a look at. And if you can just type quickly on the chat, what is that one key takeaway that you got from this webinar today, I'll be happy and it'll be a good feedback for me. That's all I had. Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, here is my LinkedIn ID. And there is a culture survey here in Agile Leadership Journey website. If anybody wants to if anybody wants to go ahead and take a culture survey, just like that for an organization, it's a free survey. You can go ahead and give it a shot. The link I have pasted there. All right, that's all I had. If we have time, I think we are on the dot. So if we are allowed to answer a couple of questions, I'll be open to do that.
Just one question, Rashmi.
Yeah.
It is an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that 4 quadrants that compete. That was really takeaway for me.
Okay.
But if you see, my question is that the research says any individual, the sustained habits and new things when we wanted to learn, approximately takes a month to pick up a new skill.
Yeah.
And to get matured in another 1 month. To really demonstrate the expertise, and maybe it will take another 1 month. That is what I understand from the research.
Okay.
But if that is the case for individual, as an organization, how much time do you think it needs to get into this kind of agile culture and sustained habits for a large team, Rashmi?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, but I think it depends on the kind of people that you have, on the kind of culture that the leaders are trying to. If your leaders are focused on learning and development and give the, like most organizations, so heavy on delivery that there is no space for learning, right? People have to work overtime if they have to attend a training. I have seen so many organizations that do work because they attended 2-hour training, they do 4 hours of extra work. If that is how your culture is, it's not sustainable. But if your organization leadership is giving you the space and time to learn, then the learning curve is faster. As an organization, the business agility report says it takes about 2 years for any organization to see benefits of agile, and for the real change to happen, it will take about 8 years. And so it's a long-term journey.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So you can go to Business Agility Institute. It's a website, and there is a Business Agility report for 2022. Just download it. It has some interesting facts for all of you.
Sure, Rashmi, I'll do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Correct. That you said that important, but the balance required in all the 4 quadrants is really, that was, I think, a good point for me. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. So, Shravari, should we call it a day?
Yes, Rashmi. Thank you. Thank you so much for such an amazing session.
Thank you.
It's well received and quite interactive.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it was, I was happy with all the kind of questions that I was getting, and it was a good learning for me as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, all of you. We'll catch up again. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.